Hey everybody, it's Sam over at the Foot Whisperer Reflexology Institute here in Tampa, Florida, USA. I am so excited for this live video. I know that I'm just a couple minutes early, so as everybody continues to jump on, just as you hit refresh and we start to get going, this is basically an interview where I have a list of questions that both you have given Kelly and Kelly has given me, so that we all get a chance to talk shop about foot reading, which is what I do, as well as reflexology and how I got started and all that jazz. So as we start to get going, the goal is for you all to post your questions in the comments section and interact with me, basically, because I have predetermined questions here, but I would very much like to know what is on your minds so that I can make this video of utmost value to you all. Thank you, Kelly. I sincerely appreciate you having me on again. It's so amazing. If you see me looking down, I'm looking at the chat and the camera at the same time. I'm not really sure where to put my eyes. But as everybody's joining, I think I'll just start with kind of how I got into reflexology as a basic kind of preface as everybody's getting in. So here in Tampa, Florida, it is required that you have a massage therapy license in order to practice reflexology. And so I started off in massage therapy, but the reason why I got into massage therapy in the first place was because I was originally on a physical therapy track. And I was all set to become a physical therapist, and then they changed the requirements from a master's degree to a doctorate, which would have been another 4 to 5 years of school. And I was like, screw that mess, because me and school, traditional schooling, don't get along very well. So I decided to become a massage therapist instead. And then about a year and a half into trying to figure out like how the body is actually wired and how it's put together, and understanding the fact that what they teach you in school and in textbooks is not how the body actually works, I finally took my first reflexology class begrudgingly, not thinking that it would work, and turns out that it was the only thing that did. So I got into reflexology totally by happenstance, which if you've listened to the Foot Reading and Reflexology podcast, you know that so many other people in the reflexology community share the exact same story. Like, we didn't get into reflexology because we wanted to, we got into it because it kind of pulled us into the craft. And I think that that's just a really fascinating way to experience something so powerful, is totally by divine providence. Anyway, so everybody's jumping on, everybody's saying hi, everybody's saying how much they're looking forward to it. So thank you all so much. Let me jump to a couple questions that you all gave to Kelly. So the first one is about the energetic transference during a reflexology session. The question was very long, but basically during a session, what happens when you feel the pain of your clients in your own physical body, and how do you shake or discharge or ground yourself after a session from that standpoint? And what we need to understand as reflexologists is that the body is electric, the body is alive, and our bodies are meant to communicate with one another. And this is through the use of what's known as mirror neurons. And it is a social adaptation because we are social creatures. So it's normal for your body to feel somebody else's pain. A lot of people would like to categorize that as being an empath or activating the skill of empathy. But I disagree. I think everybody has that experience. And I think that we are hardwired to feel each other's sensations and to know what we're thinking and feeling just as social creatures. So what I tell my students is, if you are experiencing pain during a session, or your client is picking up on you or vice versa, that's normal. Breathe into it. Chances are it's just your body's communicating, and that knowledge is valuable. But also, if pain lingers after the session, if you feel the sensations after the session, chances are you haven't been up on your self-care. And also, chances are you already had a predisposition for that pain in the first place. So what I tell my students is the way that you get rid of it is through the basics: food, water, meditation, exercise. If you haven't been up on your basic lifestyle requirements, that energetic sensation is going to stick around for a lot longer. You cannot meditate your way into a good diet, nor can somebody do push-ups for you, and likewise, just having a stone on you that is supposedly energetically grounding is not going to replace an active self-care practice. So what I recommend is go get some water, go get some food, go meditate, go run around the block, like get the heart pumping, get the joints moving, get the energy shaken out. And during the session, you won't feel as strained because you know how to handle and you feel confident in your ability to handle those sensations. And that kind of plays into question number 2, which is when working with clients, I sometimes feel a buzzy sensation in my fingers, especially when working on the solar plexus reflex. Totally normal. The body is not just a meat suit that's moved around and laid over like skeletal structure. It's an electric organism. So energetic sensations and electrical impulses and things of that nature, temperature shifts, even visualizations during a session, just the optic nerve trying to register what's happening to the brain, and the psychological process trying to work its way through the session. Like all of that is totally normal because we're not just muscular creatures. We're not just skeletal creatures. We are electric and intuitive and energetic and all these different things. So it's about communicating holistically about what reflexology does and who you are as a practitioner, really who your clients are. Like you touch your client far in advance of them actually walking through your door. And that's something that I personally believe. So anyway, those are 2 questions. I'm trying to see if anybody's posting real quick in the comments. Oh my goodness. Goodness gracious. Everybody's saying hi. So now would be the time for you to ask questions as I continue to scroll. If you have any, just post them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll move on to kind of question 2 that Kelly sent me, which is how did your passion and talent for foot reading evolve and develop? So painfully slow, and it was very much a tale of frustration, because in my school where I was originally trained, not to name names, but high levels of pressure were emphasized and lack of assessment was very present. So we were told to jam until the reflex until basically somebody passed out, essentially, and the more it hurt and the deeper you went, the better you were going. And I found that not to be true. And when I started to scale back my pressure and listen to the reflexes, it started to get super interesting to me, because I was picking up things, but I didn't know what those things were. I didn't understand like what markers were or what the feet were trying to say. I just knew that from my training, like the feet meant something other than just being feet. Like there was a map somewhere in there, but to actually look at the map literally and see the organ, like that was never impressed upon me as a student. So a lot of it was just like seeing things over and over. A lot of it was really struggling to identify kind of what I was seeing and getting things just told to me by the universe and by the body and by the feet themselves over and over until I finally realized what I was looking at. I would have 10 clients come in with the exact same pain, and I realized that this marker in this place represents something to do with that pain. So the next time I saw it, I was able to identify it. And that's really how it started. And then I looked into foot reading, and I found that there weren't a lot of materials out there, but I did find Jane Sheehan's book. That's where I got my start. Thank you, Jane. Love you so much. So excited to get to see you in the UK in September. And devoured her book, absolutely devoured it. Moved on to Chris Stormer's and Imre Simoji's books and the online course that Jane has, and just started to play with the concepts. And as I started to learn about people like Sue Ricks and all the other foot readers out there, it started to develop into this thing where it's like, no, this actually exists. And then just validating over and over through trial and error and making the mistakes and saying things when I shouldn't have and not saying things when I shouldn't have. And it was just a very interesting process to grow through experience just by doing. But now, like, there's so many more books on the market than when I first started. So I really encourage people to follow the passion, follow the curiosity, because that's really what kept me going. I was just super curious. The body is so intelligent, and that intelligence amazes me. And so by looking at kind of the way that the body is wired and keeping that motivation strong, I think that that's really how I got started, was just following that innate curiosity and looking at the resources that I had. But then also, part of the reason why I wrote a book was because there weren't resources, and I wish people would have told me stuff. And, so it all kind of plays into it. But it was definitely, the passion and the talent came from just a lot of hard work and a lot of hitting walls and just wanting to do better. Emily posted, I've just started reading your book, very new to it. How would you say is the best way learning it in a practical sense? I think I just answered that, Emily. So glad we're on the same page. What I personally think is that clients are our best teachers, and even just like looking at feet is really powerful. So you turn around and you Google feet if you're not looking at actively clients' feet. So a client comes in, you know, that's the best example because they can talk to you, but just even like searching for feet online, looking at the different types of feet, reading the books, that's really what will fuel your process, is just, like I said, through experience, but getting creative with that experience as well. Amy says, do you have anyone in the reflexology world who inspires or motivates you and your practice right now? Honestly, Kelly does a lot, Sue Ricks, Chris Stormer, Jane Sheehan. I'm watching them all on social media. It's definitely something that I stalk people a lot, and especially my students. I look at their Facebook pages, I see what they're posting, how they're talking about foot reading and reflexology. But honestly, the field is still really small, in my opinion. So the people who genuinely inspire me to do greater are actually people that I follow outside of the reflexology arena, people who talk about business and entrepreneurship and marketing and the hacks that they've used to grow their business and build, you know, multi-million-dollar companies. Like, I like to follow their example and jump out of the reflexology realm because we're a very heart-centered community. We tend to do a lot of stuff that is very much about taking care of others, but not so much about focusing on the business. So I think it's important for us to look outside of kind of our network and our circle to find people who have maybe built bigger practices than us. Or like at one point I was studying the makeup of Massage Envy, which is a major bodywork chain here in the US, and kind of cracking the code and considering like, well, what would it take to build a franchise model for reflexology? Would that be feasible? And kind of sinking my teeth into new ideas that aren't necessarily just reflexology based. Barbara Scott, I'm just reading your book. Fascinating. Oh, Barbara Scott, oh my God, she's reading my book. I love it. So glad that you're finding value in that. Fabulous questions. Emily says, what's the best way for using info in your foot reading book in a practical way? Yes, so in the end of the book, I talk about documenting your foot reading experiences and just doing that over and over and over. That's really important. Even if you don't have live clients' feet, like Google the feet and write up a note about them as if they were a client. But then also, like in my foot reading online certification program, I talk about like doing an all call on social media, ask for people's feet, and then ask to, like, if you can ask them pointed questions or give them feedback or generate a foot reading report for them. I have a video on how to do that on the online school, but that's also in the online course that I teach. So just getting creative with ways that you can ask people for photos of their feet or looking at feet or just basically doing the work, Emily, finding ways to implement it that are maybe creative. Or one of the exercises that I have my students do in the online course is go to a crowded area like a coffee shop or a mall and look at people's feet and watch the way that they walk. And that's really going to be your best teacher over time. Okay. Yes, Jackie, awesome. Just did first reading with a client. Hope it went fabulously well. Let me move on to question number 3. Can you name one standout moment when working with a foot reading client that truly blew your mind? This is actually a little bit of a sad story, and I've talked about this in multiple kind of webinars that I've done, but I think it deserves to be said because it does hit on multiple aspects. Because one client who came in to see me back when I was first studying foot reading, I really didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't understand kind of what foot reading was, the power that it held, and how to assess the feet in general. So I had this client who had literally burning, hot, stabbing pains in the second toe on the right foot. And we went through like shoulder stuff, and we went through potentially neck stuff leading into the shoulder, and nothing was resonating. And we talked about the emotional side, and the client wasn't really giving up any further details, and they weren't really on board. And so I was kind of stumped, and I really didn't know. I knew I was looking at something, I just didn't know what I was looking at, and I didn't have the vocabulary and the experience to sit back and say, hey, I really want you to take this seriously. Instead, I just tried to, traction the toe a little bit more and do things that were more reflexology based manually to clear the zones. And so the client kind of fell off the face of the earth. And then about 9 months later, came back and said, it's funny, you kept saying chest, chest, chest. And it turns out that I had a lump in my breast that I had to actually get treated and removed. And that was a real wake-up call for me. And if I had known just a little bit more information and had a little bit more experience, I think I would have been able to communicate in a way that the client understood to take that a little bit seriously. So that was probably the first concrete experience that really sticks out in my mind, that foot reading showed me how truly, truly powerful it was. In a negative way, but those are the experiences that we learn from the most. So that's definitely where I personally stuck my heels into the ground and got motivated to really pursue foot reading as a serious practice, because it told me, I just didn't know how to listen. So it was my mission from that point on to just get so good that that would never happen again. And that's kind of how it happened. Online course, yeah, Emily, so I teach a foot reading online certification course. It's a self-paced course, 13 lessons. All that can be found at footwhisperer.com/classes. You'll be able to see a link to the online school and look at all the programs that I have, not just the certification course, but also recordings of webinars and also mini masterclass series on the various body systems. Sophie says, looks like you should be my next book purchase. I love it. Thank you so much. Yep. Good stuff. Oh, thank you, Sally. Oh, goodness. All of the people that I look up to in the reflexology community, who I previously mentioned that I stalk on social media, are all liking and hearting and all that jazz. It really gives me a lot of warm and fuzzies. So next question, what advice would you offer to a reflexologist who wants to get started in foot reading? Definitely back to the idea of just read. Get every book on foot reading that you possibly can and just read. Read it over, like read it until the pages start falling off. A part of the reason why I started becoming so vocal about foot reading was because of the tools, versatility, how it enhances a reflexology practice. And really just, I've said it multiple times, I'm starting to get tired of myself saying it, but the power of it, like the power of the technique. So if you can get Jane's book, she has multiple books at this point. Chris Stormer just launched her second book, but her original book as well. Marisa Moshi's book on feet and personality, Sue Rick's book on the feet, but then also like, I know that the Association of Reflexologists did kind of like a combined book on foot reading, physical and mental emotional. My book is in there. And then also like, I do foot reading videos on YouTube. Find those, like just immerse yourself in the content, because that's really how you're going to learn. It doesn't have to be alone, because there are support groups as well. So join, I do a foot reading and reflexology online community group on Facebook. Like ask questions, find a mentor, talk to me. Let's get you immersed in the craft and the practice, because that's really how you learn. But it definitely starts by just getting the books. And immersing yourself in just the book content, and then finding just little by little those nuggets in real life practice. I call it finding them in the wild. It's one thing to read about a marker and hear me talk about foot reading on and on, but it's when you really find the experience of either identifying a marker on yourself or somebody in your family or somebody with a health issue or with a client. It really changes your perspective, and you never look at feet the same way again, but also the other extremities too. So don't just be limited by feet. It's truly a practice that will change your life if you give it the chance. And it all starts by just reading the literature and finding the online resources that are available right now. Any other questions? Yes, I will totally post a link to all of that. Again, another question, does everyone have a slightly different take on foot reading the same way all reflexology charts are slightly different? That is a great point, and yes. So the way that Chris Stormer reads feet is definitely more from a metaphoric, symbolic point of view, versus Jane Sheehan has elaborated on the grid system that Emery Samoji started with. Emery Samoji started with reading toes. Jane expounded that into a whole foot grid system, which I then took and ran with and incorporated both the physical and the mental emotional markers. And I tend to use a very systematic approach, but I also weave in the elements and talking about markers being hot, cold, wet, dry, and understanding constitutional types and things like that. So it's definitely person to person. It really gives you an idea of how vast, different practices are. To just give a shout out to people who have already commented, like Barbara Scott does fertility reflexology, Sally Kay works with the lymphatics, Kelly Hainsworth coaches other reflexologists and helps them build their business. Like, we're all in the reflexology community. We just do very different things. I'm a reflexologist. Like, just before I hopped on this interview, I was treating a client who came in with her service dog, because she has chronic anxiety. And we actually had a breakthrough moment where she told me that she was actually giving up alcohol, which was a big part of her inflammatory condition. Like, I mean, really cool stuff. But at the end of the day, like, I'm a foot reader. Like, I'm more interested in the assessment aspect, but I still do reflexology. We all come together from this community just in very different ways. And likewise, foot reading is very different from our own perspective. I know Angela talks a lot about her visual reflexology group and her courses that are largely physical, but I tend to be mental emotional as well, bridging physical and mental emotional, whereas Jane Sheehan tends to be mental emotional. We're all coming from the same place. We're just trying to all get to that same idea that, the body is interconnected, and if we just give it a chance to talk and be open to the interpretation of what it's trying to say, we'll be able to get a lot more information. Kate, just enjoyed your online course on the integumentary system. Thank you so much. The Fraught group is a great resource. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Excited about your trip to the UK Ireland tour conference? Yes, totally. Can you give us the details? Yes, that is excellent. So I think that's a couple questions down, but we'll go there. So as most of you know, I will be traveling over to the UK in September. I'll be leaving here the 12th and arriving the 13th. And my track goes as follows. I have it listed here, so pardon me while I read. I'll be in Norwich the 14th of September over at the Jackie Hamilton School, teaching a one-day class there. I'll be in Wirral at the Gaia School for Natural Health with Carolyn Roberts. Thank you for hosting me. And that'll be a one-day advanced foot reading class. And then the Foot Reading Conference hosted by Sue Ricks. I'm so excited. That'll be on the 20th. I will be there. I will be one of the 5 keynote speakers for that event. That's going to be super fun. Then it is off to Milton Keynes with Alex and the Temple School. I'll be doing a 2-day advanced foot reading class there on the 21st and 22nd. And then I am off to Brighton to do a foot reading workshop there with Chris. And all of those details can be found on my website. So if you just go to footwhisperer.com/classes, scroll down a little bit, you'll see the UK tour and you'll see the dates as well as the links for registration to those classes. And it's just going to be super fun. And then next year I'm doing the North Ireland Reflexology Conference. Oh my goodness, that's going to be so fun. I'm so excited. I'll be doing multiple classes there as well. So it's a little bit far off, so I haven't gotten dates or venues. But if you're in Ireland and want to host a class, let me know, hit me up for 2019. And that's going to be super fun. And then we have Sally Kay coming here to Tampa to do lymphatic work at the Institute late February, but there's only one more spot for that. Super excited. And then we're in talks with Barbara Scott to get her over to Florida to teach a 4-day reproductive fertility reflexology workshop. So that'll be super fun. But yeah, that's going to be my trip. It'll be 2 weeks. I'll be flying out the 26th. And then I'll be taking a couple days off and then flying up to New York for a 5-day foot reading retreat up at the Omega Institute. So lots of teaching, end of September, beginning of October. Concetta, hi Sam, lovely having you online tonight. Wanted to ask what kind of certificates we get through the online courses. Great question. Because foot reading is not a regulated profession. I give you a certificate of completion. You are a certified foot reading practitioner through me, because I am kind of the authority that's certifying you, but at the same time, like there's no regulating body, so it's hard to talk about kind of a certification in that way. But at the same time, you know, it's basically certificate of completion based at this point until we form a foot reading association, which I'm sure we'll talk about at the conference. That'll be fun. Everybody's saying hello, hello. Jackie says, I'm booked into the class at the Gaia School. Awesome, so glad that everybody's enjoying those class dates. Okay, next question. So I see you have a new advanced foot reading course in the pipeline. When can we expect to see this available, and what can we expect from that? So yeah, so the first foot reading online certification course launched at the end of last year. And that was based on the book, Foot Reading, a Reflexology Primer on Foot Assessment, my first book. And then this kind of ties in with the second question about the 100 Feet project. So when I was thinking about book number 2, the big feedback that I got from book number 1 was that it was a fantastic manual and introduction to the foot reading concepts that I've learned, you know, that are successful in my practice. But there weren't a lot of pictures, and that was because the self-publishing agency that we used, they had specific requirements for pictures, and it just got really cumbersome, and I couldn't include as many pictures as I wanted. I was able to get the charts in there, so you get some good visuals in terms of, like, very similar to the downloadable charts that I have available now through my website. But I couldn't post as many photos as I wanted. So my goal was initially for book 2 to do a picture book, kind of like a case study book. And I wanted to call that the 100 Feet project, and that's still going. So if you want to submit your pictures for that project, just go to footwhisperer.com/projects, and you'll be able to see the details for how to submit your feet for that book. And I'm still collecting for that book. But something spontaneous happened, and the creative process kind of took me in a different direction, and I did a big post on it, and everybody loved it, and it was just very frustrating, but also very eye-opening, because I'm learning just like you all. And I had this wave of new content that came to me that I started teaching about advanced foot reading and advanced foot reading assessment. And it was based off of kind of a combination of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and astrological work and different diagnostic methods from different traditions, and the extensive research that I've done with dietary protocol and movement exercises and yoga. And, you know, it really started to get to the point where as I was teaching, like, another book came out, and I was very shocked at the same time to start writing, because I have a daily writing practice, and the content that I was writing was so powerful and so good, but it was different than what I had intended on writing. So I'm now in the works of online course number 2, which will be the advanced version of the foot reading online course. So it will be an advanced foot reader certification. And that will probably be book 2 as well. And the 100 Feet project, which I'm still working on, has been pushed to the back burner as I continue to work on that on the side, but then really work on some of the advanced content that I'll also be teaching over in the UK. So you all in the UK who will be attending my classes, you'll get the first taste of what's coming down the pipeline in the advanced foot reading online course. But that's going to talk a lot about a concept that I call the assessment triangles, the assessment triangle, but also the remedy triangle, and how to work with somebody's diet, their movement, their internal stressors, but also assessing the 12 body systems and how to do a much more comprehensive intake and really drill down into what different systems of assessment would call the interrogation techniques of working with coaching a client into the next state of their health and wellness. So all of that's going to be coming in book 2. It's going to be super fun. And the online course is really going to come out before the book, because that's where a lot of the online content is definitely in demand right now, which is why you're seeing me post more of that, is because everybody's just gobbling that up like you wouldn't believe. The online school is just crazy busy right now. So I'm trying to do more of that, especially as I develop, you know, connections like these, a more international audience. I feel so blessed, but at the same time so overwhelmed by the attention. And it's hilarious. I've vocalized this multiple times to my live students, and sometimes in the Facebook groups as well. But the online content is being devoured at such a fast rate, and my live classes, we go in 2-year cycles here in the Tampa area, the Florida area really, because we have the massage license requirement. Every 2 years we have to renew that license. So on a non-renewal year, it's hard for me to fill my live classes unless students are coming to the year-long certification program that I teach live. So I'll need to cancel a live class because I don't have enough students to fill it. But then my online school is blowing up and people are asking me to come over to the UK. So it's the idea of shifting my attention more into the online platforms, generating more book content, generating more mini courses so that I can start to teach and remotely get into everybody's lives as opposed to just, relying on being physically present. So I'm learning at the same time you guys are asking, and that's really kind of where I'm at. Yay, everybody's saying Brighton, Brighton, love Brighton. Sam, can you tell me if your foot reading appointment slots are in UK time? Would love to have you on my books. Thank you so much for asking. So the online scheduler that I use for remote consultations is actually in US time. It's Eastern Standard Time. So it's Florida, New York time for the actual states. So it's about a 5-hour difference if you wanted to book with me online. That's a good question in terms of also, like, I do remote consultations if you want to do a foot reading consultation, and that's really the other powerful side of foot reading as opposed to just being manual, is with manual reflexology, obviously somebody has to be there. You can't like press the screen in order to, manipulate somebody's reflexes. So foot reading allows us to be remote and to give advice and consult and really touch people's lives through the internet, which I think is really cool. So I do remote consultations, and those are normally half hour, hour and a half, where clients will actually send me via email their foot pictures. They'll take pictures of the tops and bottoms of their feet. I'll jot down some notes, and then we'll basically have a conversation just like this. And we'll talk about the meaning of the feet and do a lot of education on foot reading and reflexology principles. And it's just a method to help understand kind of what your body is trying to say through the lens of the extremities. We also go into like not just the feet. If you have questions about like a mark on the face or the hands or the ears, pictures of those can be sent, and we can talk deeper about all 4 extremities, not just the feet. And that's kind of the consultative approach that I do. And that's very much something that I wanted to get into in the advanced foot reading content, is more of like how to do a good consult. Because once you get the fundamental principles down of like the grids with the zones, the elements, the difference between your horizontal, vertical zones, your area, your influencing factors versus constitution versus markers, the 4 elements, things like that. Once you start to crack the code on foot reading principles, it's time to start like having a deeper conversation with clients. And how do you do that? And that's really what the advanced principles are going to be talking about. So that was long-winded answer to a very short question. Oh, Lorraine. Hi, Lorraine. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see her on here. Yes, I would love to answer your question. Do you feel I can develop and use foot reading skills to look at different types of feet and working with clients that are nonverbal, that may have intellectual disabilities and may have communication issues, to discuss other nonverbal feedback using foot reading skills? Yes, totally, 100%. So when we look at clients who are not able to either consciously or unconsciously verbalize what's happening, I've worked very heavily with children. Actually, I just had a mom and child in the other day, and she basically said, she literally said fired up, and that gave me a cue in terms of what elemental markers to expect. And indeed, like when he got on the table, his feet were hot to the touch. It was so cool. So we had a lot of conversation about fire markers and fire constitution and things like that. So, but also like I've worked with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, also clients who are nonverbal. In fact, my associate Cody, who graduated from the Institute's program, who works with me here, he goes to see a client who's nonverbal on a weekly basis, and he finds that really, really beneficial in terms of communicating through the reflexes, kind of what's going on a daily or weekly basis with that client. So I think that it's totally possible. I think that that question is really opening up you know, the conversation with us being just reflexologists, because when you think of reflexology as just a manual therapy, I think you're cutting out half the equation, really. Like, the foot reading assessment content allows us to be more well-rounded professionals and gives us an idea of what's happening in the body, and that no longer be limited by just, you know, press the button, fix the issue. That's no longer what we're focused on. We're focused on reading and assessing and having a conversation with the client and the body, not just, you know, pressing the reflexes to have an effect, but really taking that outside of the session into a consultation approach. So I think that's totally valuable, Lorraine, and I totally agree with that. It can be a valuable asset. Do post your questions to Sam. Fabulous, fabulous. Will you be doing any foot reading at the conference? I would love to do foot reading at the conference. I'll definitely be interacting as it gets closer. I think the conversation that I'm going to have, I'll be doing a 1-hour talk. Each of the speakers is doing a 1-hour talk at the foot reading conference. And the topic that I've decided is, and that ties in with the next question, is using foot reading in social media and how to develop a foot reading presence online through the use of social media channels and documenting your foot reading experiences. So I think that that's going to be really fun. Let me actually talk about that real quick. Kelly asked, what advice would you give a practitioner who wants to start to do more promotion online? And what advice would you give somebody just starting out on YouTube? So for those of you who have been following me for a really long time, you know that I'm very active online. It's something that I've had to learn. Just because I am younger doesn't mean that I've had it any easier. I hated Facebook. I absolutely hated it. I did not want to do it. In fact, I didn't have a Facebook account until, like a personal Facebook account, until last year. When I did the first interview here, that was actually the debut of my personal reflexology, my personal page. Kelly didn't know that, so that's pretty cool. She kind of drew me into the Facebook bubble, because before then I was just using my business partner's Facebook account in order to do the social media stuff. So I really didn't like social media, but I had to learn to use it because I knew it was such a valuable tool for my business. And with the videos, I really just started talking to the camera. And the videos that are on the YouTube channel right now are just a fraction. They're the tip of the iceberg of the ones that I actually filmed, because some of them were so horrible. They were so bad. I just so embarrassing to think about, you know, how I was in the camera when I first started. And that was really hard to get over that hump. So I think that part of it is just doing it. Like, if you're excited about the content, if you're excited about reflexology, if you're excited about foot reading, then just do it. Like, make the post, go live. Like, it's easier now more than ever. I went live on Instagram for the first time just before here to promote the talk. So I'm still learning. You know, it's just about being willing to try and letting the excitement of the modality and the practice be stronger than your fear of social media. I think that's the really big lesson, because I didn't have a Twitter account until a couple weeks ago, and Kelly's just been, Sam, you have to be on Twitter, and I'm like, I don't really like Twitter, but I finally caved in, and I'm actually loving it. I'm actually really enjoying it. It's a totally different platform, and it has different energy to it. So I think that social media is growing and it's evolving, but I think the goal is not necessarily to focus on social media. I think it's to focus on content, because if you have something to say, and I'm looking right into the camera as I say this, like, if you have something to say, the world needs to hear from you, because there's always somebody who knows less than you do, and you're talking to them. You're talking to the person who you were 6 months ago to tell them what you know now that you wish you would have known then. And that's the basic kind of premise of all social media education. And that's your audience, is you're talking to the you 6 months ago or a year ago or when you first started, and you're giving them the advice and you're sharing with them the experiences that you've had that you wish you would have known. And if you could reach back in time, like, that's the goal. It has so little to do with the platform. It has everything to do with the message. So I really encourage you to take that viewpoint. And oh my God, so many people are loving that comment. I'm so glad that everybody's really enjoying that, because that's really what I personally think it's about. Okay, so let's move on to that. Sorry, Sam. Lorraine, thank you. Work in the field. Uh, oh, thank you. You build my confidence with every word. It's like I pay you guys to say this. Yes, so content is really what it's at. And actually, Sally Kay is a great example of this because she talks about, publishing her work. And that's something that I really want to talk about at the conference and something that I touch on in the book, but something I really want to talk about in terms of marketing reflexology is the idea of you have to document what you're doing. And even if it's just as simple, if you look at my Instagram, posting a picture of somebody's feet that they send you or asking permission from a client to circle a marker and share your thoughts on it, post something really quick, use a couple of hashtags. It doesn't need to be super fancy, but instead just get the message out there like, I learned a new marker today, and post about it and be excited, and that excitement will be infectious. And that's really kind of what it boils down to, is you sharing the message. So taking what you're doing on a daily basis as a practitioner, or even like asking a question, engage in social media, follow the groups, see what everybody else is doing, and just see what I'm doing, and then mimic me. Like, I don't care, take what I'm doing, run with it. Just don't let yourself not be heard. And I know that was a double negative, which is terrible, but really just allow yourself and your message to be vocalized, because that's really what it's about at the end of the day. Okay. How important has the use of social media been in your business? Again, everything. Like, using social media, I think, has become more and more a part of my business, especially as I've grown internationally. I vocalized my frustrations earlier about like the cyclical concept of continuing education here where I'm at in Tampa, Florida, and not being able to fill live classes, but then have so many people overseas who want to hear from me. So I think that social media, especially as, the book got published last year and how it's exploded, and, just my will, back to the social media concept, it's just literally been about my passion for reflexology exceeding my fear, because it's scary. Like, like, I've done millions of webinars, not millions, but a lot of webinars at this point, and still before I jumped on here, like, I was shaking, I was nervous, excited, but like nervous. Yeah, that never goes away. So don't let that stop you, but instead it's about the passion for the work overriding that fear. And so with the social media, like, as my content has been devoured in other places other than my own backyard, like, I've had to learn social media. I've had to learn how to put a class online. And so I think it's really forced me to come out of my box, not just with the content, but also socially, like being willing to engage more, being willing to have conversations more, not just being in the background, but being an active part of the community. So social media is huge for me. It's becoming more and more of a part of my business every day, and more a part of my life every day. Like, it's starting to really break down a lot of my social barriers, because I don't get along with people very well. I'm very good when I'm the subject matter expert and I can talk to people about something and educate people about something that I know. But if you ask me to like chat about the weather, or to like talk about sports, or to, just be like social with people, I don't do that. Like, unless you're changing somebody's life, like, don't talk to me. And that's a terrible way to say it, but I'm super socially awkward. So you'll see me at the conference as well. Like, if you just want to come up and shoot the breeze, I'll probably get really uncomfortable and standoffish. But if you want to talk about foot reading, like, I'll be totally on it. And that's just kind of what social media has helped me do personally, not just professionally. So I think that's a big part of it. Scrolling through the comments, totally agree, need to keep shouting loud, exactly. A question from a member, medication, yes, that was it, okay. Thank you, Kelly, for posting that. I forgot about that question, and I think that this is super relevant. So let's talk about technique for a second, and let's talk about the session dynamic. So when a client comes in and they're on a multitude of medications, the question basically was super long-winded, and if you want to read that in the comments, you totally can. A lot of details there, but basically it boiled down to, like, if a client is on a very heavy medication, does that influence the effect of the session? I personally have not witnessed it affect the session. What I have seen is that the body will receive the work regardless of what medications it's on. And that's also, like, I've had multiple clients and multiple students who have worked on people with full paralysis, as well as like I've personally worked on people who are intoxicated, either like by choice or by medication, and they can not get words out very well. But I did the session because I knew that they needed it. A little bit of ethical stuff there, but likewise, I had a client come in yesterday and she turned around and she said, yeah, I've been struggling to sleep at night and I've been having this bad neck pain. So I went to my doctor and he put me on Xanax and steroids. Xanax being a cold medication, steroids being a hot medication. And I just saw all the motion and the coagulation of fluid in her feet, like the fire and water were battling it out in her system. And I was like, well, that helped not at all. But I had to hold my tongue and, you know, just work with the client where they were at. So I think when we look at a client who's heavily medicated, we have to understand that the body will hear you regardless of what you think medically is happening. The body will always understand what your touch is trying to accomplish. And I think that's the innate intelligence of why reflexology works as a modality and why it's more complicated than just press, reflex, fix issue. Somebody comes in and you just jam on the stomach reflex because they have a stomach issue is not going to help very much, but the body is going to understand what you're trying to do. It's going to induce a meditative state, induce an altered state of consciousness, start to produce endorphins, and start to feel better and bring itself back into balance just through the simple act of touch alone. So same thing goes with medication. You know, if somebody's incapacitated in any way, shape, or form, don't think that that should prevent you from using touch, because touch is such a powerful healing medium. And I always say, you know, just yes to the touch. So even though that client that the person talked about is very medically compromised and is heavily medicated, and, you know, how sedated is the nervous system and does that have an effect? I personally don't think so, because I've seen, even with somebody who is heavily medicated, sedated, or should not be feeling things, they are receiving the work on multiple levels. If you wanted to totally negate the physical aspect of the work, talk about energetic, talk about just the calming presence of somebody else treating them like a normal person for 2 seconds instead of a cold doctor or a cold nurse who just comes in, checks vitals, and leaves. You know, you being present and sitting with them and holding space can be even more powerful than the touch itself. So that's part of the work as well. Great question. Lynn Butler, yes. Questions. Thank you. So glad you're enjoying the book. Yes, social awkwardness is definitely something that I think we all can relate to. Okay, so question number 10 that Kelly sent me. 2018 has been a very busy year for you professionally, and what plans do you have in the new year? So part of the big thing is I'll be going to Ireland. The UK trip is really what I'm focused on right now. I'm really not focused too much on next year, because the UK trip is going to be not just the farthest I've traveled personally, but it's also going to be the longest I've been away from the Institute. So a little bit of separation happening between me and my baby, me and my my physical storefront location. That's going to be really big for me. But I'll be remotely checking in every day just to make sure that my institute is safe. But no, Cody will be here. He'll be running it. Everything will be fine. But I think for next year, what I'd really like to focus on is getting book number 2 out. I'd really like to focus on the online course. I'd really like to focus on more of the content that everybody can be a part of instead of just the live stuff. I'll be doing, towards the end of this year, I haven't announced this yet, but towards after I get back from my trips in September, October, I'll be doing a webinar series on kind of basics of body work, but reflexology specific stuff too, from my local people. It'll be CEU accredited, but then I'll be live streaming it, and then I'll be putting the replays on the online school. So that'll be happening every other Friday, and that'll be a really cool thing as well. But just doing more stuff like that, like using more social media, using more live streaming, not doing as many live classes where everybody can't be a part of them. Like I'd really like to make sure that everybody can get on board the foot reading train and kind of learn from what I'm doing and learn from the results that I've had and the experiences that I've had, and kind of take their practice to the next level. So that's really my focus for next year, is taking it to that next step and really giving back to everybody that's been following me, because everybody's just been so amazing. Then how do you stay motivated and focused? This is a really powerful question, and I wanted to save this towards the end because we've got about 10 minutes left. But I think that going back to the beginning, I stay focused and motivated because it's not something that I have to fake. And I think my genuine curiosity helps me with that. Like, a lot of the reason why people do social media and quit is because they're like, oh, well, you know, it's scary first and foremost. So they finally get the courage up to do it. They do a couple posts and then they let the fear win. And then they stop doing it because it's like, well, that was scarier, you know, than I expected, and it didn't really bring me business. And I think that I stay motivated because it's my curiosity to figure out how the body works, how the foot is actually mapped, like to share client stories, to figure out what other people are doing, to understand how other people view reflexology and have kind of mastered their craft. And my passion for the field starts to really take over at that point. So if I were doing it, like I hit a wall trying to post every other day or whatever, you know, talking about, you know, the Google searchable terms for reflexology and just trying to use it as a marketing ploy. And that was really, really difficult. So I think when I switched over to just being passionate and to just sharing what I felt was relevant and to share what I was interested in, which was really more the foot reading work than the reflexology work. And I focused just on speaking my truth and, you know, showing people what I was learning and being excited about the stuff that I was learning and sharing that and really trying to, you know, call out into the vastness of the universe and say, is anybody else seeing what I'm seeing in the feet? And really just letting that excitement take over. That's really how I stayed motivated. And that's really how I stay focused, is because even when, you know, I veer off track, I always pull myself back because it's just my natural state. I'm fascinated. And I think that fascination is what other people are attracted to, and what's made the foot reading aspect of what I do so successful is because I'm genuinely interested in what I have to say, and regardless of if people follow me or not, I'm still going to be talking about it. When I go out with friends on the weekends, I'm looking at people's feet. Like, that's what I do. It just, to me, it embodies how interconnected our world is and our universe is, and how it's like a universal truth, you know, and me touching the raw wire of something that powerful and that creative and that interconnected really gives me energy. So with that, I think that's what keeps me motivated, is the fact that I'm just genuinely fascinated by the process, and I'm not faking it. I'm not trying to use it as a marketing ploy. Like, I'm trying to share it and help it grow and to learn what's next, and to fall down the rabbit hole of health and wellness just like everybody else. It just so happens that the feet were my first stop on the journey. I'm researching all the time. I'm learning all the time. I'm taking lots of classes. I've been enrolled in an herbalism class. I'm looking into medical astrology right now. I'm looking into Ayurveda right now. I'm looking into traditional Chinese medicine. I'm always trying to find how other people do what I'm interested in, which is basically hack the body for greater health and wellness. So that's kind of how I stay focused and motivated, is by just surrounding myself with those new things but old things, and just staying consistent with my message. Okay, questions. Thank you, that's so confirming. Looking forward to the Ireland trip. So excited. Thank you for answering my questions. Yeah, any other questions? We've got like about 8 minutes. Eagerly waiting for my book to arrive. I love that phrase, speaking my truth. Looking forward to seeing you at the Foot Reading Conference. Last question that Kelly kind of posed to me was, when you do have a day off from work, how do you like to relax? A couple things that a lot of people don't really know, and back to that social awkwardness, starting to get just a little bit nervous, like I feel my shoulders creeping in just a little bit. I actually like to binge watch Japanese animation or anime. That's one of the things that I've always been attracted to. I was actually even more stuff, and a lot of you are going to be totally freaked out because you don't know this about me because I haven't really shared it, but For 4 years, I was actually involved in live stage combat, where I cosplayed or dressed up as various anime characters, and we all wielded like broadswords and shields, and we enacted pre-scripted fight scenes for entertainment, basically at one of the largest anime conventions in Florida. So that was a part of my my teen years, and I did that for a good while, and that's just always been something that I find relaxing, is not just the like animation part of it, which I think is visually stunning, and that there's a lot of like magic and otherworldly stuff in it, but something like in my brain gets very soothed when I watch something happen and I hear something happen, but then I also read across the bottom of the screen the words that I'm hearing in Japanese and English. Like it flosses my brain in some way, and that's like the best way I can describe it. So I do a lot of that. I also cook, I read. I just got 2 new books from Amazon delivered the other day. Like I just can't stop reading. But then also, like, I'm not a big social person. I've talked about this. Like, I'm not one to go, I have to force myself to go socialize with people. So it's not something that I'm not hanging out at bars or like going to social gatherings. I'm just not comfortable with that. So I think a lot of me is my ability to relax is just me like going into my cave and like just decompressing that way. Such energy, don't be shy, yeah, so acting was like a really big part of it. I think that contributes to the stage presence and how I've overcome some of my social awkwardness. Is I assume the role of Sam as foot reader, and that's, you know, stepping into that excitement, and that personality is really what allows me to put like personal Sam to the side. And I think that that's a lot of what social media is. And a lot of people give social media flack for, you know, oh, people aren't really being authentic, and, you know, they're just trying to show what everybody else wants to see and not really themselves. And that is true. Like, this is only a big part of who I am. This is a big part of who I am because it's my business, but it's, you know, also a smaller part of, you know, who Sam is individually. But it does help me like put myself into a box and step into a role and use a voice that I otherwise would have not used if I was stuck in my, you know, antisocial stuff. So social media is very valuable in that way too, you know, stepping into the role of who you are business-wise and who you are practice-wise, versus like, and this is a big social media mistake that a lot of people do, is they try to combine their personal with their professional. And I think that if you're, you know, posting pictures of your kids and, you know, the food that you ate and blah, blah, blah on your business page, that's a no-no. Always try to separate those two if you can, because the people who are interested in who you are and what you do professionally are not necessarily going to be interested in kind of your personal life. And I know that I've unfollowed people on Instagram from that multiple times, just because it's like, I'm sick of seeing beach scenes about every vacation that you're going to. I follow you because I'm interested in reflexology and foot reading, not because I want to see photos of your vacation. Like, do you ever work? And that's harsh. Super harsh. A little bit of harsh Sam came out to the surface, so forgive me for that. But like, that's the thought process. I'm interested in, you know, learning and growing as a professional. Like, I own a foot reading business and a reflexology business. I want to learn what you know, and that's another reason why I encourage you all to share your experiences, because I learn from what you have to say too. You know, we can all learn from each other's experiences, which is why I did the all call for the video challenge, the video testimonial challenge in my Facebook group. So if any of you are members of the Facebook group, post your testimonial. Like, I want to learn how reflexology changed your life and has changed the life of your clients, and, you know, how you use foot reading, and share some of your stories so that we can all take those stories and spread them around and become better practitioners as a whole, because how we share is how we grow from that standpoint. So really understanding each other's experiences and vocalizing those is part of the social media practice. Question from a member: what is the significance of a longer second toe? Bossy. Not really. That's the negative side of it, but the positive side of it is somebody who's very emotional by nature. They have a very strong heart space, but then also they tend to vocalize that heart space very, very strongly. They also need to vocalize that heart space very strongly, so they do very well in leadership or teaching roles. Also that they tend to have shoulder problems, not just physically in terms of rotator cuff stuff, but they also tend to hold their tension in their shoulders. So that's Wow, I whipped that out really quick, guys. That was really good. See, this is just because I do it all day. Like, I'm literally thinking about feet 24/7. Do you have a list of books on your reading list or website you would recommend? Yes. So my book is up there. All of Jane Sheehan's books are up there. Sue Rick's, Imre Simoji, Moshi is up there. The AOR, Association of Reflexologists book, also Chris Stormer's books. All of those really, really important. Jane Sheehan has an online course. I have an online course. Like, the resources are totally available. And we are just about to hit 60 minutes. So I will let everybody who is tuning in way past their bedtime get to bed. And I thank everybody who stayed with me for the hour. It doesn't feel like an hour. It feels like we just got started. If you have any other last questions, just post them in the comments below. I would love to continue answering them throughout the day. But then also hit me up, like private message me through the Foot Whisperer, join the Facebook group. Like, don't let this be the end of the conversation, because I think that we're all on this journey together. Like, we're all on the same train. We're going to the same destination. And, although our specialties may be different, and although, some of you feel like you're better than others at certain things, like, we're all students, we're all learning, we're all at various stages. And the common theme is, like, don't let your fear of where you think you're at stifle your next steps, because we're all going to grow from each other's experiences if we just overcome and get the courage to share them with each other. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, everybody, thank you so much love, so much passion. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. But that will end the video, and make sure to check out the replay. I'll post this on my YouTube channel over the next couple hours. So see y'all later.